Hi everybody, thanks so much for joining me today for this painting tutorial of Garden in the Sky. I'm working on a black painted stretched canvas. It's 12 by 16 and I've got the following colors: neon orange, warm yellow, pink, and titanium white. I'm going to start this painting by getting the canvas a little bit wet, watering it down with a 1-inch mop brush. This way the canvas will take the paint and blend around a lot easier. So I'll just go around in little circles with my brush, and then right away I'll start adding the colors. I'm going to begin with my neon orange. All the neon colors that I'm using are listed below and there's a link for them. They're luminous neon acrylics by Holbein. Slowly I'm going to add the other colors one at a time, and then eventually take all of them and just blend them around the canvas in a circular motion and creating lots of swirls. After I cover the canvas with the orange, yellow, and pink, I'm going to take another brush, the same brush, just a clean, dry one, and pick up my titanium white. I'm then going to start going over the entire canvas with the same technique and brush stroke, just creating little circles and swirls. So I'm going to begin adding the white on top of the wet orange, pink, and yellow. And I may need to add a little bit of water to my brush, even though I'm painting wet on wet. My studio is quite warm, so it's making my paint dry a lot quicker than I want it to. So I'll just take a little bit of water there, here and there, and use that to blend all of my paint around. So what this is going to do is just make really soft shades of all these colors and bring them to life and just prevent them from drying way too dark. And I'm painting on a black canvas because it really adds a lot of contrast and depth in a painting. So I've got another mop brush here, and I'm just taking my light blue violet next, and I'm going to come in with my clouds. So now I'm making little scoops for the peaks of my clouds, and I'm going to leave the background colors showing through here and there. So I'm just going to come in and I'm going to keep doing this, little circles here and there as well, scoops and circles, soft blending strokes, again with the blue and a little bit of white here and there so I get some lighter and darker shades. And with a little bit of water here and there as well, I can thin my paint out and my clouds, giving some of the parts of my clouds more of a smoky look to them, with the hints of those colors kind of filtering through and peeking through. This will make my sky a lot more interesting and have many different shades than just blue and white over top of that, if that makes sense. So if you want to have the colors underneath showing through, again, thin your next layer of paint out. Or you can blend them together as well. It all depends on if you're painting wet on wet or wet on a dry painting. And if you're not sure what I mean, just leave a comment below or any question you have, and I'll be really happy to answer you right away. So I'm going to continue going around the canvas like this, again, not covering up the entire canvas. What I'm doing is just building up my clouds slowly, one at a time, by adding little scoops, bigger scoops. Right here in this section I'm working on, this is going to be where I add my little pillar, little island, an archway at the very top. So I want to start adding and building up my sun there. That's going to be the brightest glowing part of this painting. Of course, I'm going to have sun rays coming out of there as well. But for now, I'm going to continue building up, adding more white and more blue. And then I'm going to switch over to a smaller brush, and you'll see how I can really bring these clouds to life and add sunlight. I've got neon yellow cool now and a number 6 filbert brush. I'm going to use titanium white and my neon yellow cool, and I'm going to mix them up just a little bit here. Get the brush loaded on the very tip, so I want to have a little scoop of paint there on the tip to work with. And then I'm just going to start creating little wiggly lines, mini little scoops here and there, and I'm going to kind of just weave around, in and around between the blue and the background colors. This is going to give me more light effects and just really create soft, warm light and a glowing effect in the sky. If you want, you can use any yellow. It doesn't matter. These are just the colors that I've chosen today, but your painting will look just as pretty using any shade of yellow you want. Same with orange and The only thing that I would recommend is using the blue I'm using today, or ultramarine blue or cobalt blue, and mix it with a little bit of white. I would stay away from phthalo blue because that's going to interfere with your yellow too much and give you more green going on in the sky, and that may be interesting. It may look kind of nice, but I think it will not be as complementary as this light blue violet is with the peaches going on in the background. So just keep that in mind, and I will have a full list of all the colors I'm using below the video in the description box. I'll also have links where you can share your finished painting that you followed along from one of my tutorials with on our Facebook group. And I've also got Patreon where you can join and unlock exclusive videos, longer videos, and much, much more. So I'm going to continue around the entire sky here, creating all these little scoops and peaks, and this just adds so much mood. I think it just really brings the sky to life. It makes all those clouds pop out, and it's a lot of fun to create too. So you can incorporate a lot of different pastel colors this way in your sky. Just follow the same rules, dark to light. So you can tint your white for your brightest highlights, like what I'm doing here. You can tint your white with any color that you want. You could even use a turquoise. You could use a pink. But I really like the way this cool neon yellow looks against the warm yellow background, against the neon orange, and even the light blue violet. When I go over and filter over this soft pastel yellow over the blue violet, it gives me a really soft, minty, slightly turquoise shade that's quite nice and not overpowering. So it does work really well. And in fact, I am going to be coming in a little bit later on with my bright aqua green turquoise. So now that I've gone all around the canvas, adding my soft golden peaks, I'm going to concentrate and focus on this one area source of light right here where it's going to be the brightest. And I'm going to use more white than yellow this time. So just a little hint of that yellow in there, and I'm going to create so many little scoops and layer them and layer them. So we have a lot going on in this one area. And then I'm going to add some soft sun rays coming out just about in all the directions. I'm going to leave the right side of the area without any sun rays. I just decided to go with the shapes of the clouds and stick to the way it's kind of leaning in, the scoop in the middle between those clouds. It's leaning in and pulling towards the left. I hope that's making sense to you guys, but that's why I decided to add my sun rays right in here in this opening. And I go all the way up to the top, and then later on I add a little bit down, right straight down below after I add my little floating island. So I'm going to just keep adding. I've got, oh, and I want to mention, I forgot to mention, sorry, I've got a number 10 flat brush here, and I'm really thinning out my paint. So it's really important to thin your paint out using some water. You want to have just enough water in there so that you can still pull and spread that paint around, but it's transparent. So if you have too much water, what will happen when it dries is you just won't see anything. So it can be a little bit tricky sometimes. It's something I recommend practicing on. So just, for a day, just for an exercise, just take a day to practice the amount of water and paint and pressure that you use. And I really recommend, if you're just learning how to paint sun rays, I would use a flat brush. It's a lot easier to get those straight lines. Once in a while, I'll be a little bit lazy when I'm painting, and I'll just use my filbert brush if that's what I'm already using for something else, and I'll just add a little sun ray with a filbert brush. That works too, but it can be a little bit hard if you're just beginning because you'll be fighting that natural curve and that round end that the filbert brush has. So I'm going to add a little bit of neon pink now. I added titanium white right in the center there, filled that little area in, and that of course is going to be where the sunlight is coming from. It's the brightest part of the painting. But I'm just going to tint my white now and do a light thin layer of pink, this light bubblegum pink over top, and add some sun rays. So this is going to look really pretty. It's going to give us that soft rainbow effect that we sometimes see with sun rays. And so I'll just add a little bit here and there. I think it looks really pretty over all those other colors that we have in the background. And then I'll add a little bit more around the sky later on using a different brush. I'll mix a little bit of yellow and pink and white here, and I'm gonna even add a little soft peach sun rays in. Eventually I will be adding and enhancing this painting with my bright aqua green turquoise, and I'm really excited about that. That is what I just think brings the whole color palette and painting together. All the colors just kind of harmonize together and really complement one another. I'm slowly getting ready to start adding some foliage with these two following colors. I've got light olive green and I've also got some Mars black. But just before I use those, I'm gonna add a few more colors like I mentioned before, and I've got another mop brush here. It's a 1 inch. This one's an oval, but it doesn't matter. Just use any mop brush that you have. And now that the background is dry, I'm gonna go over and just add a light dry brush or filter over with this pink and just a little bit of white. So just dry brush and kind of just swirling around. Now every time I bring this over the yellow, the bright yellowy peaks and highlights on the clouds, it gives it such a beautiful look. The color really stands out, and it also looks nice. This pink also looks nice over the blue. So it's creating, the pink over the blue is creating soft shades of violet. I guess I should mention that you guys could also use purple in this painting too. That would look really pretty. I'm going to be a little bit more generous in this area here. This is going to be more towards us in the foreground, so I want the colors to be stronger. So I'm using more full strength neon yellow, the cool one, and the neon pink. Now, if you decide you want to soften them at all and you feel like the saturation is just a little bit too strong, just take a little bit of white and add that, and it'll soften it up right away. So I'm going to get ready to start adding some more colors to the sky, and I'm going to go back over to my number 10 flat brush. I'm going to make sure that it's wet, so I'm going to be adding a thin glaze of this turquoise here, like I mentioned earlier. This is my bright aqua green turquoise. It's by Liquitex Basics Acrylics. Most of the paint I use is Liquitex Basics Acrylics. I'm mentioning this because so many of you guys are asking what paint I use mostly, and I really like the affordability and all the different color options that Liquitex Basics has. It's a good quality paint and it's not going to break the bank. However, my neons that I use are Holbein, and they are expensive, especially if you live in Canada. And they're not that easy to find. Once in a while, you can find them at fine art stores. I'm just going over little areas here, a little bit here and there, like I mentioned, just with a little bit of that bright aqua green turquoise and a little bit of white and water. You can add this anywhere you want. This color looks nice over all the other colors that we have. They're all pastel tones, so they all look really nice together. You can't go wrong. But back to the paints. These ones are more expensive. I have tried and experimented with other neon or luminous paints in the past. There's no comparison. So that is why I use these ones. They're really worth the money. You don't need a lot. A little goes a long way with these. So as you guys can see, this looks so pretty. This little touch of bright aqua green turquoise over the other colors, just enhancing everything. It kind of gives it an iridescent, almost like holographic look to the painting. It's quite magical. It's satisfying to paint. I hope you guys give this a try or incorporate this type of layering and sky within your landscapes. Be sure to comment below and let me know what you're learning today, what's inspiring you, what you're enjoying about this video. I love the feedback and I love connecting with you guys one-on-one. So I'm just going to add a little bit more here and there, and then I'm going to move on to the next step. I'm going to add a little bit more full strength light blue violet on the very bottom and in a couple other areas, just for a little bit more depth and to block that black from coming through. So even though I wanted to paint on a black canvas, I don't want I don't want that black to overpower, because sometimes when the painting dries, if you don't use enough white or color in your painting, the black is really dominant and it'll come through and you'll be really unhappy with the outcome. So it is really fun and satisfying to work on a black canvas because you get that instant pop of color and depth. Just be sure to be more generous with your colors and a little bit of white. Okay, so I hope I explained myself well there. I'm back over to my number 6 filbert brush. I'm going to take my light olive green and a little bit of my Mars black, and I'm going to start working on my little floating island up here, or my garden in the sky. So I'm just going to tap and slightly pull side to side, about 2.5 inches wide for this. You could make it a little bit bigger if you want. It's completely up to you. You could also make it a little bit smaller. I always tell people to go with their gut feeling and also the size of the canvas that they're working with. So obviously I've got a 12 by 16 canvas, like I mentioned, so I don't want to add anything too big that I want to be far away in my painting. So I thought about 2.5 inches was just right for this little island up here. So I'm stretching it out across the top, making it kind of pointy on either end, and then in the center, I'm going to tap lightly and pull to make it look like all the earth underneath is getting smaller and smaller, and there's roots down below. I'm going to build up the depth by adding a little bit of black right underneath so I can separate the top of this little island from the roots and the dirt underneath. Now I have painted a lot of floating islands. If you guys love fantasy paintings and fairy tale stuff and all that kind of artwork, I've got an entire playlist. It's kind of my thing. If you guys are new to my channel, it's 99% of what I have on my channel. I love painting from my imagination. So I don't have preparation or reference photos most of the time. I'm just picking colors I like and letting the painting come to me one idea at a time and brushstroke at a time. So check that out. I'll leave a link below. If I forget, it's in my playlist. I've got lots of different playlists organized for you guys. So just added a little bit of light olive green right on top, a little bit of white to that light olive green will really make it dry a nice bright green. And here, like I mentioned before, I'm going to come in with just straight black. And just by doing this, along with this brush stroke, instead of going across, I'm gently pulling and flicking right underneath, and that will make it look separate from the top. With a clean brush, I'm going to take a little bit of black, a little bit of blue violet, and I'll also be adding a little bit of white here and there. This is just to start my archway and my pillars. So I like to use a filbert brush for this because the pillars and archway they're rounded, right? So using a rounded end brush, such as the filbert brush, will really help you get that look with very little effort. You can use a flat brush. I think I kind of switch up and use a flat brush when I'm working on the larger one in the foreground. And that's because I'm also going to be using that brush to paint my steps. So I'm not drawing or sketching this out or tracing it out. I approach all my paintings freehand. It's just something I enjoy. It's the way I enjoy creating. But if you guys want, go ahead and draw yours out first. You can use chalk. You can use whatever you want to use. But this is just how I enjoy creating. So I'm going to add those 2 lines on either side and just eyeball it. It's not going to be perfectly symmetrical, but that's okay with me. And then the big arch across the top to connect them. Then I'm going to be coming in with a little bit of white just to make it look 3D and stand out, and a little bit more rounded. So it's up to you how much white and how bright you want yours to look. With the sunlight being behind it, it makes more sense to have it a little bit darker because the sunlight's not in front. So I hope that makes sense to you guys. However, I didn't want this archway to feel too dark, so rather than using a lot of white, I kind of went with more of this bluey gray color and left the outline of the archway with a dark bluey gray color. So not a lot of black. The only time I'm going to use a a lot of black, or I guess just the most black in this painting, is when I'm building the foliage and the vines and plants around the pillars and the archways. That gives me a really, really good base for my highlights and all my foliage. But I want to be clear that a little bit of black goes a long way. So it's a really, really strong color. And be sure to add more color than black when you're using it, because it'll dry 2 to 3 shades darker and it will overpower all your colors. So I'm adding some steps inside now that are going to veer off more towards the right side. And you can have yours going in the other direction, more towards the left if you want. That would look just as nice. And now I'm going to be adding a little bit of foliage on the top with my mini mop brush. And I'm just going to take a little bit of black and more of the light olive green. So this is a great little brush to use for all the little areas in your paintings. I think of all the brushes that I use, I recommend having 2 to 3 different sizes of them. It's really, really going to help you, especially with a mop brush, because it just gives the perfect texture to all of your bushes and leaves and trees. You can add foliage using any brush that you want. If the only small brush you have is a liner brush, you're just going to have to tap a lot more, and you won't get that fuzzy kind of look that you get from using one of these mop brushes. And if you guys are wondering, these are makeup brushes that I'm using with an iridescent crystal handle, and I also have a link below for these. They're awesome brushes. I've never had a bristle come out of them, and they last a really long time, and they're under $20, and you get like a really big set of them. So you get an angle, a round, an oval, and a few others. So as you can see, I'm just adding a little bit of light olive green over top now. And for another highlight, and just to make sure that the light olive green dries that color, I'm going to add a little bit of white. Again, I don't want too many highlights on this side because the sunlight is on the other side, but I know this is going to dry darker, so that's why I'm making it brighter right now. So just adding a little bit of white to my light olive green will really help it dry the perfect shade of green once it's all dry. And knowing how much to add comes with lots of experience. Like, you just have to practice and see what it looks like the next day, and it'll either be too bright or too dark or just right, and it really just comes with practice. You'll get there. It's hard for me to tell you the exact amount I'm putting on my brush, so just take your time and practice, and with experience you'll be a pro at it in no time. So over to my little flat brush. I'm not sure what size this one is. It's about a half an inch. I'm going to start coming in with dark gray, so a little bit of my light blue violet, black, and a little bit of white. I'm going to start the first step, so it's going to be the longest on the very bottom, and then they're going to start getting smaller and smaller and closer together until they kind of just disappear up into that little island where we can walk up there and then continue on our little adventure or journey up in the sky on the other staircase. With a clean brush, I'm going to add a little bit of pink, yellow, and white. So make a really pretty sunlit, pastel colored highlight for the tops of my steps. I'll be applying the most paint on the steps down here in the foreground, and then I'm going to use less and less paint, less pressure on my brush as the stairs get further away. And I'll just even these out a little bit, but I'm not overly concerned or worried about making everything perfect in my paintings. It is art, and it's how it looks all together. So don't ever worry and spend too much time on one little thing in your painting. I'm just going to use the same colors, yellow, white, and pink, a little bit of water on my brush, and come in and add another layer of sun rays. I thought it would look pretty to have some more sun rays shooting out from behind this little island here, or this floating world, whatever you want to call it. And I'll be adding a little bit more later on as well, just to kind of soften the top of the stairs and make it look a little bit lighter back there. I'm going to start coming in with my final archway. I'm going to use the same flat brush. So I mentioned earlier that I recommend using a filbert brush for rounded structures. But I just decided to show you guys how you can use a flat brush if you don't have a filbert brush. So again, I'm just eyeballing this, and I'm going to try to make it as even as I can, somewhat on either side. And I'm going to have the base of each pillar a little bit wider. And don't worry too much about like making it perfectly even on the bottom of the pillars, because we are going to be coming in and kind of camouflaging them with a little bit of moss and foliage after. So I'm just making them a little bit wider on the bottom. And then I'm going to add a few little lines on either side for the architecture, just to make it look a little bit more interesting, like for the column. So just a little line. You can do 1 or 2 lines sometimes. Well, usually I do 2 little blocks or lines on either side. You can see on the first little one I have at the top, the other little archway, I've got 2 little lines there, and I just did 1 here, but you can add a second one. Once this tutorial was done, I did go back and add a second one, because I just decided that it looked like it was missing something. And it's really, really nice to come in while the paint is wet with a bit of white, because what this will do is it'll give you this like creamy blended look, and it kind of adds a little bit of a shine, like the light is shining on these pillars. So if you can catch it right away with your highlight, your next layer of white over the gray, try to do that. If not, that's okay. Add a little bit of water. So if your first layer is dry, then add a little bit of water to your white and you'll get a similar effect. But it is really nice to paint wet on wet sometimes, because you get a beautiful blending of colors and layers of paint. I'm going to add a hint of that peach color, so pink and yellow and white, to give the sunlight hitting this archway that pretty peachy glow that we've got going on in the background. Rather than it just being white, it's nice to incorporate all those other colors. And I'm going to go over thinly on the top before I come in and add all my foliage. I'm going to be using another mop brush. The next mop brush I'm going to be using is actually one of my other favorite brushes. It's not a makeup brush. You can actually get this one at an art store. It's called a Princeton oval mop brush, and it's a 1-inch oval mop brush, and it's a really awesome brush because it's kind of like in between a filbert brush and a mop brush. It's the shape of a filbert. It's got kind of like that rounded end, and it is great for getting in and around narrow areas where you don't have a lot of room, but you really want to have that mossy effect in your paintings or around your structures. So you'll see in just a moment here, I'm just going to add a little bit of a shadow there with a darker shade of gray. So just a little bit more black with my white and blue violet. So here it is right here, and it's been used a lot. As you can see, the paint is flaking off, but these brushes are really great because the bristles don't come out of them either. And yeah, you can get this perfect moss and branch and foliage look. They're awesome. You guys will love these. And I've been getting some great feedback from you guys. All my students are just loving these brushes, and you're painting, enjoying painting your landscapes a lot more. So if you're just new to my channel and new to painting, you guys are going to want to get one of these. You can get them online and at just about any art store. Michael's has them if you're in Canada. I always say that because I'm in Canada, and it can vary what you get in Canada at Michael's from what they offer in the States. So I'm just going to go around the edges of the pillars, the base of the pillars at the bottom here with a little bit of black, light olive green, same color combo that I used for the original little one up in the sky there. And then just kind of on a slant, all I'm doing is kind of slanting and tapping and kind of making it look like it's wrapping around. And those vines are going around the pillars. That gives it a kind of a neat fairy tale whimsical look. and it also gives it more of that 3D look. So I'm going to add a highlight, but again, the light is back. It's behind this archway, so I'm going to concentrate on the side facing us that we're looking at. It's going to be darker, but again, I don't want it to be too dark because I want this painting to feel light and calm and tranquil. So I'm hesitating using any more black than I have to. So what I end up doing to really make my highlights pop is I'm going to go around just the edge, the outside edge of, and you'll see right here with another mini mop brush. This is also from the makeup brush collection. I'm taking my neon yellow, a little bit of light olive green and white, and just going along where the sunlight would hit on the very, very edge and the very, very top there, just bright little hints of highlights. And this really gives you that sense of light and on the other side, and a shadow facing us. But nothing's too dark in this painting. It's still just a nice overall filtering of colors. And I'm going to add a little bit going up the steps too. I thought I would just add a little bit here and there. You'll see me add that in just a little bit. And I'm also going to be adding a few waterfalls. I couldn't resist. I thought I'd add some waterfalls. I've got a dark line. I don't know if you guys can see that on your screen there, but there's a dark line that's kind of peeking through the black canvas showing underneath. So I thought, oh, that's a good spot to add a few waterfalls and help camouflage that dark line back there. And now I'm just taking a little bit of black and painting wet on wet. So I'm painting over top of the light olive green and the original dark green color. What this is going to do is just give us a little bit more shadow and make our vines and leaves look more 3D. So I'm going to come again on the very top and just make that a little bit thicker, and then go over with more light olive green. Again, so that it doesn't dry looking pure or straight black. Then I'm going to do another layer of my brightest sunlit highlights here. The neon yellow and titanium white. So just a little bit, less is more. Okay, just a few little dabs, dots and dabs here of that neon yellow and white. And the reason why I'm using the cool yellow is because it's going to dry more of like a bright green compared to the warm yellow. They're quite different, if you guys are wondering. When you get this, you can get the whole set of the neon paint, so you'll get both warm and cool in the set, which is quite nice. And that's the link that I'm leaving below. It comes with neon pink, neon rose, and neon red as well, and the orange. But I'm just coming carefully around, not all of the steps. I just want to have like the steps feel like they're floating. So I don't want to have too much on either side of the stairs like I usually do in my fantasy paintings. So I just did a little bit there, and I'm going to go back over to my mini flat brush, and I've got that beautiful frosty mint color that I made by mixing my titanium white, a little bit of water, and my bright aqua green turquoise. I'm going to add a few little waterfall tears, and then just a light little dusting, very dry brush down here, just a touch of that, because I thought it would look pretty and complementary with all the other colors. Most of the time I'm led by color and how colors look together when I'm making decisions in my paintings. And this color is just what really gets me excited when I'm painting, and that's what I love about art and painting. So I tend to use a lot of colors in my paintings, but you guys can definitely narrow it down to only 2 or 3 colors in yours if you want, or you could even add more. I think I mentioned earlier that purple would be a really nice addition to this painting. And I'm just going to come in and add just a little bit more of my white here, and then I'm going to soften it and gently blend just because it's looking a little bit, it's drying darker, I should say. So by coming in with another little thin layer here of white and just tapping in gently in between all those vines and leaves, this will give it a little bit more 3D look. It'll bring back some of those midtones and subtle highlights. So I'm going to go down the pillar now, and I'm going to gently pull across. That will also give it a rounded look. Now I tend to do this when I'm painting little castles, and also my palm tree trunks. So they have that kind of pattern. So this is the same brush stroke that I would use for that, in case you guys are wondering. I thought I would just add that little bit of extra info in where you could use this and apply this same brush stroke. So just finishing up, adding a little bit more white here, giving these pillars kind of a frosty look, a little bit of light on them. And then I'm going to add a little bit of moss hanging from a couple of these stairs. Just tapping using the corner of my brush. I would normally use my mini mop brush for this, but I can just easily add a little dot and dab here of my light olive green, a little bit of black, and then highlights with my neon yellow and white. Okay, so it's time for the next step, and this one is my favorite because I love painting flowers and I love using neon pink. So I'm going to use my little flat brush again, and I'm going to concentrate on using just the corner, tapping, full strength neon pink. And just a little bit here and there, accenting the vines, twisting around the pillars, and a little bit at the base. I'll add a little bit to the other archway in the distance. Less though, I'll use less paint. And I'm also going to be adding a little bit of white now, again using the very corner of my brush, and I'm going to apply highlights with this. Where the highlights are going to be the brightest, on the very edge and outside of the pillars and the archway, I'm going to use more white. I will use a little bit of white for all the other areas of the flowers, just so that it dries pink. Otherwise, if I just left the neon pink alone over top of the dark green foliage, it would end up drying mostly just like a black or really dark green. So the luminous neon paints are transparent, they will dry transparent. So to counteract that, I added a little bit of white just so that when it dries, it dries bright pink. I'm going to just continue on here adding, like I mentioned, less paint, but I want to have a little indication of flowers and a garden up there as well. So it all flows together nicely. So as I add the finishing touches to this painting, they're going to be just a few little shadows and more contrast by adding my light olive green and a little bit of black. So I'll just be kind of adding a little dot and dab here on either side of the pillars, and the top of the arch, I'll add a few more little sun rays in here. I think I mentioned earlier I was going to soften this area up later on towards the end of the video and come back and just add a little bit of golden sun rays. You can add some pink if you want to them, even a little bit of turquoise. I really want you guys to have fun with this painting, make it your own. I hope that you guys enjoyed watching this and that you learned a lot. Be sure to leave a comment below or a question if you have one. Subscribe to my channel. Whenever you do that, it really helps put my videos out in the algorithm so that more people like you wanting to learn how to paint get a chance to see my videos. So otherwise, it's just going to be hidden all the time and not many people are going to get a chance to watch them. And I really believe in the healing that art brings. It has helped me. It has helped so many of my students, many people that suffer from all sorts of health related issues. It's a wonderful thing, and I want to be able to share it with more and more people. So hope you guys help me out by sharing this video, my channel, commenting, and subscribing. So like I said, I'm just adding the finishing touches here, little dots and dabs of black and olive green. And with that being said, I'm going to thank you guys again so much for joining me today. Have a wonderful day. Wishing nothing but the best for you all. Take care. Bye, everybody.